Okay, so before the break, we were looking at a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't necessarily Python code, but that's one of the nice things about this class is it's used in both prerequisites of this class. So most people have seen some Python before, so we can spend more time on the software development part, because remember the name of the course, software development with Python. The course is about software development, and we're using Python to study that. Whereas in most of the other ones, we have to focus a lot on the language, and all the software development stuff just becomes side notes. So we can look at that, spend a little bit more time on that. And while I'm talking about this in class, like last week and then this week, I'm assuming you all are getting random Python practice on your own, right? Y'all been writing some Python practice on your own, the homework assignments and then other stuff. Oh, and speaking of the homework assignments, if anybody wasn't here earlier, when I said it, I put a comment in the grade book. Remember, the manifest and the bug report are critical parts. It relates to that software development aspect. So those are required on all the assignments. And if you didn't have either one or both of them, they're worth 10% of the assignment. So if you didn't put either one of them in there, it was like 20% off the assignment right away. But I put a note in the grade book that maybe I just didn't find it. If it was there and I just didn't see it, but I had clicked all over your all's GitHub repositories. I was looking and seeing everything you all did, looking at the whole history and all of that for the one link you sent me. So I'm pretty sure I saw everything you had there. But if I didn't see it and it was there and I didn't see it, just let me know where it is. Or if you add it back in, I'll put those points back on.
I know you showed us on Monday how to add it as we're putting it all together. Can you show us where to add it after everything's already in there?
Oh, after we have the repository?
Yeah, so I'm one of the people who didn't put the requirements. I did the work before the class on Monday, and I didn't add the requirements or the manifest. I can't find where to put it in now that it's already a repository.
Oh, it is just a file. So requirements.txt is just a file that you upload. So you just need to add another file to the repository. So if you go to the GitHub site, whoops, when you're on GitHub and whatever the repository is, I find one for this class.
Just make sure you leave it blank, Kyle, because I put a couple words in mine.
Yes. Requirements.txt is for an automated process. So that is feeding into something specific. So it has to have that name. And if we don't have anything to tell that process, it needs to be a blank file. And if we don't have that file, we get a file not found exception, which will cause things to crash. So that's part of that is just forming the habit. Everybody in this class is serious about software development, right? So form that habit of putting a manifest on every single thing you do. You don't want to leave the manifest off. So you can just go to add file and upload a file and upload a new one to it.
All right, and the requirements.txt and the manifest are the same thing, right?
Requirements.txt is one part of a manifest. Yes, I'm going to call it a manifest all semester. So yes, when I say manifest, I'm generally referring to requirements.txt. We will see the other two parts. Actually, there's 2 or 3 parts. We'll see the big ones. We'll see 2 other parts of a manifest. Most languages, they do it in the same language all the way through, usually XML or XAML, which is Microsoft's version of XML because they have to do their own thing. XAML, if you've seen that spelled out, but usually it's that. But with Python, they went with that easy thing. So they pick and chose from different languages, and each part of the manifest is made with what the language that makes that easiest. There's only one part that's written in Python, and then we have that requirements.txt, which we're getting ready to look at what goes in that. If you need to see the list, we look at that Monday. And then there's a toml file we'll see later, which is really about building a wheel and a couple other things. We'll see that later in the semester because it's a more complicated file. That answer all the questions about the manifest? Or do you want me to show you like if you download the folders? Well, I might as well do that real quick. So first off, this is preview of something we're going to actually look at next week. Because the other day we did the get GUI to grab our files, or maybe I'll do the get GUI again. I was gonna go to the terminal because I'm more comfortable with that, but if I go get GUI, the GUI has, again, I think this has the absolute best version of the history. Everything on the page is clickable. So it has a great way to look at the history. So if we go to https:// if you haven't seen it before, :/ means protocol. Before the end of the semester, there will be times where I say type a protocol, and :/ means protocol. You probably typed it, but didn't. FTP protocol. FTP : //. Usually SSH we do from a terminal, but if you needed to connect with SSH protocol, you do SSH : // HTTP. It's a protocol : / means protocol. That is going to show up before the end of the semester. And you probably typed it and didn't know specifically that was the instruction to tell the computer this protocol. github.com/francis-chris5/SDEV220-spring2023.git. And target directory, I'll go over to my delete folder. Select the parent folder on the Get GUI, and then it has to create the folder. There's a whole bunch, has to create a special kind of folder, so we can't use the new file button. The Windows new folder button creates the wrong kind of folder. So add a name for it, like get stuff, and then clone that repository. Should have it in a couple seconds. There we go. So if we needed to add a requirements, which I don't think there is in that. So if I go in here, I think I left that out of the class example as well. Whoops. I don't know why I was going to Google Drive. If I go in here, oh, no requirements.txt. So I'm going to create a new folder, or sorry, new file, new text document, call it requirements. So now requirements.txt is part of it. So over on the GUI, it's saved in the right place and everything. Go back over to get GUI, rescan, see what changes are there. Yep, need that change to go through. Stage those changes, stage that, confirm it, and add some messages. Added manifest file, sign off on it, commit to those changes, and push it back to the repository. Which again, I forgot to change that, so it created a master and a main branch inadvertently. Those are special names, so I can't completely merge those. Usually on different branches, it'll delete a branch after we do merge, but master and main are both special key names that it will preserve. But either way, I'll push it back, and then we can just push it back up to GitHub if you want to use that one. And starting next week, we'll start doing that in the terminal, and we'll probably do it in terminal all semester. Although the web browser will be sufficient for anything we do in class. But it's a manifest. It says what files we need for our software. That's an important thing. Anybody seen any of the memes from programmer humor, where there's usually somebody with a funny look on their face and the caption says, well, it worked on my computer. Okay. That's a big deal. That's if you haven't seen that one, you need to look up programming jokes. I used to show some in class. It took me almost a full week to find a list of programming jokes that did not have any dirty ones that I could show in class. And then I found one that was specifically included safe for children, and then they got rid of it. The website went down and nobody ever put it back up. And it took me a week to find at least one that didn't have any dirty jokes, but there are some great ones, and that is great for learning, right? Hearing that humor. When you get a joke, when you get the jokes about programming, you know you're understanding programming, right? But they deleted the one site I finally found, and I haven't found another one I can actually link to in class. Because I guess programmers like dirty humor. But that is better for memory, right? Like in class, they always told you something for PIMDOS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, for remembering order of operations. But dirty and inappropriate ones are much, much better for humans to remember. Study after study after study has proven that. So you can Google some of the other versions to remember PIMDOS. Ones that can't really be said in a classroom, but are going to be much, much better for memory purposes. I guess that's why all those jokes are like that. But that one I just mentioned, the meme, it worked on my computer. Because, well, during the break, we were addressing a question about changing some configurations so Spider worked. That was off the recording. But we had to change some configurations to make it work. We only changed that on the one computer, right? So if you made some software that depended on that and send it to somebody else, are those configurations available on that other machine? So that's what would go in that requirements.txt file. I didn't delete it yet, did I? Let me go in there, because actually I think I did use that. We're going to get stuff. I can't turn in a blank file because I used something. Some of y'all might have used something that did that, and I didn't even think about it when I was grading, that it shouldn't have been a blank file. This is like in the break. What did we just fix on Just Like Kyle's computer?
The version.
Emoji, right?
Oh, yeah.
I had to make some configuration changes so emoji would work. Well, we did that the first night. We installed emoji. It wasn't part of the default installation, which means if we send that program to somebody else, we can't guarantee it's going to work on their computer. That's what the requirements.txt file is. It tells Pip all of the other stuff that we use. So we use the emoji library. Okay. Pip's like, okay, need to install the emoji library. Which one? Version 1.0.0? Or what version did we install, right? Well, we can find that information. I'll open up the terminal. If you do pip and freeze, that will list out everything that is not part of the default Python installation. And I just did a factory reset right before the semester started. This computer was done first. I did this on Sunday. And then the MacBook I did on Monday, and then the Chromebook I did on right before class. That's my favorite thing about Chromebooks is how easy a factory reset is. Like on a Windows and a Mac, it takes a while. You have to dedicate a big chunk of your day and step away from the computer and do other stuff and wait for things to happen. But on a Chromebook, it's 5 minutes. And then I went ahead, a Chromebook's just a Linux system. For some reason, people don't seem to know that. A lot of people appear to, I've noticed people seem to have taken a guess of what a Chromebook is, which usually is an incorrect guess. And then they're surprised when they find out what it can do. I have used a Chromebook as a domain host, and it delivered websites fine. A Chromebook is just a Linux system. So if you're a Linux user, you already know what a Chromebook can do and how much control you have over it. So I went ahead and set up some automated scripts so that I run those scripts. And the biggest one, the one that takes forever to install stuff, a factory reset is like 15 minutes. Clean it out, start it back up. That's my favorite thing about Chromebooks is just wipe it and start over so quickly. But that's a little distraction from what we were talking about. So we have these. Emoji should be on this list somewhere, right? Oh, there it is. Looks like we installed version 2.2.0. That's going to be patched soon, and not long after that, it'll be updated. And then eventually they're going to increase the version. So 2.2.0 is the minimum one we know, right? So our requirements.txt file would need to say that emoji greater than or equal to 2.2.0. Save that. And that's what needs to go in that file. And then whenever somebody goes to install the software we create, it's like the installer is going to be like, oh, need to install the emoji library first, or this isn't going to run. It's gonna go out to the internet, find version 2.2.0, download that and install it. Right, when we run pip installer, we see a bunch of downloads before a bunch of meters run past and a big long list of things installing before it gets to the one we actually want to install. So that's all the stuff on this list. So we want to form the habit of doing that. So if you used emojis, you might want to make sure you put that in the requirements.txt file. I forgot to look when I was grading it, and I think everybody turned in a blank requirements file. So some people did use emojis already, because that is part of the English language. You will see them in professional business emails. It's not like an obscure casual thing anymore. It's part of being English language. That's how we communicate. And if we're software developers, communication is a big chunk of that. So we need to be able to communicate properly. But either way, so that's updated. And close that. Whoops, I didn't really need to close that one. Close a whole bunch of things and then put that back on GitHub. So if I go back to GUI, it should be looking at the same thing. Open existing repository. And I have a repository right over here. Open that. Rescan, we see the changes. Oh, seeing the green marks and all that. Stage it. I'll skip the message. Actually, I don't want to skip the message. You don't want to skip the message because the message becomes a link for the history of the thing. So you don't want to skip that short message. I guess I should call it a link. You don't want to skip the link to get back to this push on the repository. Fixed manifest. Sign off, commit those changes and push it back up there. And then I can merge the branches later. I can go in later and do and make sure the branches can all merge together without conflicts. That answer all the questions about the manifest thing there. And it provided a nice segue to this next thing. So if I run pip freeze, that joke of it worked on my computer is going to work on a lot of things here. And I just did a factory reset 14 days ago. No, wait, not 14 days ago. Sunday before the semester starts. So 7, 8, 9, 10 days ago. So in 10 days, I'm already this far from the default configuration. So if I make a piece of software, I need to keep all of that stuff in mind. And that's what that's a big part of what the manifest does, because we can't just send the user a message, oh, you need to install the emoji library into Python so that the software will work. We need to do that for them, right? Because odds are they don't know how to do that. They'd be like, what's Python? Why do I need to install stuff? This sounds like a security breach, and just never look at the software again, right? So we need to automate that process. And it's a lot to keep track of. I'm probably not going to need all of these other libraries in every single project. So a common way to deal with this, and it's in the instructions from the statewide course shell that I left in there. If you look at those, we'll cover the stuff in class, but I left the ones from the shell in there so that you have some reference material ready and at 3:30 in the morning when most people are doing their homework, right? It talks about virtual environments, but it doesn't tell you why we use them. It just says, do this. And everybody does that. And when in the online class, I released one video where I didn't bother to use a virtual environment to go to Django. And then I got a whole bunch of emails that was on the weekly overview. And I did that. I send out videos for the online classes, video weekly announcements. I got a whole bunch of emails wondering how I got Django to run without a virtual environment, because the instructions made them think that was something they had to do every time. And what a virtual environment does is it gives us a fresh slate of Python. We can create a virtual fresh installation of Python, and then it's a whole lot easier to track exactly what we do in that particular project. right? Pip freeze did all those changes I've done so far, and I've done some random stuff in class and other things, things we've seen, other things that we haven't seen yet. So there's a lot of changes there already. We saw what pip freeze was, but Python also comes with virtual environment ready for virtual environments. And any version of Python will run any previous version of Python as a virtual environment. So I'm just going to create a virtual environment in our own, the language we regularly use, but you can just add in a parameter with a number, right? So add in a parameter that says 3.8, and then you have a virtual version of 3.8 instead of 3.11. It's just a parameter fill, but I'll just to keep things simple starting out, right? As a classroom, we just need the foundation. You can fill in all those fine details later. You're probably going to look at the Google Docs for it at some point anyway and see where that parameter goes. But to keep it simple, I'm going to have the Python interpreter run one of the Python modules. So this is Python -m is equivalent to when we put import in our Python script. That means run a Python module. That means start the Python interpreter, run a module, so -m for module, and we want the venv module. Actually, I'm in the wrong spot. I'm going to go over to my working directory. If I can type correctly. If you haven't noticed, I'm using the monitors here in the computer lab as my laptop stand. So I'm careful not to put any pressure on it. That's why I keep make a lot of typos, if you notice that in class. So over here, I'm going to do have the Python interpreter run one of the modules, and I'm going to run the venv virtual environment module. And now I need a place for it to put it. I'm going to add a different, and on Windows, I could just type a folder name and it'll do it. On Linux or Mac, you'll want to do // which you're probably used to anyway, right? The current directory, then add another folder. But that works on Windows, so I'm going to go ahead and do it this way just for consistency, cross-platform consistency. You can leave the // off if you're on Windows, but this is what you would do on every single system. So, and I'm going to put it in a folder called PyTemp. And I chose that name. You'll see why I chose that name. So hit enter, and it'll take a few seconds because we have to install Python. You don't know how long it takes to install Python, right? We saw that. Not too long, because we don't have any user input in it this time. If I list out the folders, you can see it create a PyTemp folder. Oh, whoops. There's the people from the other class. Jump ahead to just using this. I'll type PyTemp /scripts/activate, and notice that it created this PyTemp. So we're going to come back and talk to this. So that's jumping ahead. We're going to come back to where we are. We got to the installation of it, but it looks like the other class is finished. So kind of need to, I'm going to put a break in a weird spot. Those are the two commands we need over and over and over again. I'm going to talk about it some more. So we'll come back and talk about it after I show the useful module for this week. That's okay with everybody, because it's also useful for the ethical hacking class. It looks like 3 of them joined. They don't. Hello, guys. Glad you could join us this evening.
Hey.
We were just looking at virtual environments. And as I was getting ready, deactive, I can remember how to spell deactivate, there we go. As I was getting ready this morning, every week I decided I was gonna show a useful module for Python, one that I use quite regularly or something. Because there's lots and lots of them out there. One of the libraries we import and use, and the one I had chosen for this week, I realized would be incredibly useful for the class next door, or virtual like you all are tonight, for ethical hackers. Lots of useful modules. We'll see quite a few this week. The one I wanted to look at next is one called PyAutoGUI. I'll go pull up the documentation for it. They have this nice little documentation here. And what this one does is it allows you to automate basically what the mouse and keyboard do from a Python script. So obviously we can do that in any programming language, but then we get back to the biggest advantage of Python is it's easy to work with. So this is the easiest way to do that. So automated it anytime you need to automate a process. So macros, that's the first one that comes to mind. What I was thinking about with the ethical hacking classes, it is the easiest way to make a rubber duck. You set your flash drive to auto run, and then you type up the instructions of what the mouse and keyboard does when you plug in that flash drive. So by far the easiest way. Well, I like to script code things from scratch. So if you want to write the code from scratch, because obviously there's finished versions of rubber duckies, y'all probably know about that. If you want to write one from scratch for a specific purpose, I think this is one of the easiest libraries to use. So the first thing we need to do is install it on a machine. So if you have Python installed with a pip installer and all that, it's just pip install PyAutoGUI.
Weird question. Does it actually mimic the inputs of the keyboard itself, or does it use a different like API to like call to those like actions?
So the thing I was going to talk about when this runs will answer that question very nicely, Tyler.
Thank you.
So it actually mimics it. So the thing I use it for, if you don't have pip in the environment variables, you can always call the Python interpreter. Pretty much every machine has Python installed already now. You might, if you install Python, you're probably just installing a better version of Python. But Python interpreter -m to get the module, and pip is just a module. But most machines, you can just type pip. If you're on a Mac or Linux, you might need to type pip3. Remember, part of the Linux kernel was written with Python 2.7, and nobody's bothered to update that yet. So they always have those. So if you're on a machine, you need the pip3 or Python 3 appropriately. Just that instruction will install it for your machine. And the place I use this most often for is one of my favorite little hobbies on the weekend is to do things with microcontrollers. In particular, what I really like to do is try to come up with new input devices. Paintbrushes that wave around in midair to control graphic software. A motion capture suit like we would use to translate into animations. Use one of those to control a synthesizer or sequencer, electronic music. Those two are the ones that I don't want to give up on the idea. I got the hardware and software to work, but the idea might have been a little flawed to begin with. Like the paintbrush, there's no point of reference. So if I pull out the easel and canvas and use it, it works great. But waving around completely in midair, it lacks a point of reference. And
Building a theremin would be cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. Or trying to use a motion capture suit to control a synthesizer. I'm not a very good dancer, so I can't really debug it. The hardware appeared to work, but I use this at the early stages of that for the input devices, because plug and play devices are what's known as HID reports, HID reports. They're kind of hard to work with. It's a mix of C++, port manipulation, and pure machine language. So really, really, really hard to debug things there. So I use this to test the logic. So it really does behave like the keyboard. So once that's installed, we can start using that in scripts. I'll just come over to little text editor here, create a new file. And as always for Python, we import that module, import PyAutoGUI as pig. I have a feeling if I tried to type that whole thing every time, it's going to cause, there's going to be some typos happen. Let me save that so we get the nice color changing. Delete. Whoops. Can't say it, can't call it that. Save as that name.py. So we get the color changing. And then over in the documentation, you'll see some of the stuff we can do with it. Well, I'll just type some stuff. So whenever this script runs, I'll say that library module dot move 123. I just picked a couple random numbers there to kind of start with. So save that. And then when I run it, Python and run Py, what do I call it? PyGUI.py. And it happened quickly there. The mouse just jumped to a different position. So notice where my mouse is. Let me put it. So I'll put it up there. And if I run this, the mouse jumped to a different position. Where did the mouse? Oh, now it's down here by these words. So that's kind of what it's doing. It's moving the mouse around. Move relative. What was that? Move to? I'm not sure where that's going to be on the screen. I'll put my mouse right here where those words are highlighted. Run that again. Oops. Because I have to come down here. When I run it, now my mouse is over in the in front of the PowerShell window. So moving the mouse around that way. And we just pass in instructions for what it's going to do. They have some examples here that have quite a bit of them. Storing the screen height and width, get your current position, all of that stuff. But dot click, by default, it's going to be a left click. Dot double click. So if we want to click a button and do stuff like that. So let's see, where looks like the icon for my browser is about the middle of the screen. And way down at the bottom. So maybe I can move to that position and click that button. Oh, not that one. We're in the text editor. I'm going to see where 1000 in the X is and 1000 in the Y. And just try to narrow down where the mouse goes. Where is the mouse? Oh, that's too far over. It ended up over here somewhere. So maybe 600. When I run that. Oh, now I'm over on past that button. So it's getting closer. Let's see where it
Hey,
is.
Chris, so I can see why an ethical hacker would need to know about this, but how would they be able to access or see this code?
Oh, they just write the code. So for like ethical hacking, a common thing, one of the thought was the rubber duckies, but I was trying to get something else here before too long. I think I'm going to about the right spot now. So like if I run this, it's a little too low, but I'm right by that Google thing. So if I come up maybe 30 pixels, 870, and then do .click. It should just automatically, wherever the mouse is, hopefully that'll click that icon and open the browser. Automated process.
So let me ask this question on this, this Kenyatta Samuel. So from an ethical hacking perspective, you know, from my perspective, I would want to get to PowerShell or command line as quick as possible. So not necessarily clicking on items, but basically opening up PowerShell maybe in the background and running a command, or instead of even opening up the interpreter, or not interpreter, the IDE, just running a PowerShell command directly.
Okay, so what I usually do to open that, to open that up, you can use the OS module, the regular Python. There's a couple ways: import OS, and then just pass in commands. So OS system. Oh, yeah, system, and then you can just pass in command prompt instructions right there.
Yeah,
When PowerShell and do stuff, you can type in the keyboard commands. So I think it's type. I pulled the document up because I meant to look at it this afternoon and ran out of time to get it looked at. So if you wanted to pass words, press. So we can pass in a method like this. We can press or hold keys, and when I open PowerShell, I usually push Windows X and then I to open that quickly. So we pass in those commands, it should open it up the same way, right?
Yep.
So comment those out. Close that. Get that out of the way for a minute. So if we do pig.hold, what is the name of the Windows key?
Not sure.
What is the name of Windows key? Because that would be an important one for what y'all want to say. Win key. So hold win key. Big press X.
Now, outside ethical hacking, I could see maybe a use of this for maybe some type of website testing or app testing.
Yes, automating the test.
Yeah, granted, you can use Selenium, but this will be a lot faster.
Or brute forcing a password. I send key presses one at a time and modify those in a loop. But a couple ways. I was thinking there might be some uses for this for y'all, and while it can be done in lots of programming languages, they're all going to have something like this. Python is definitely the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, I definitely see some quick and dirty advantages here. So
try running that. It typed X into the terminal, so a little bit off, but a little adjustments like that. Let's try the hotkey. Hotkey, and then that takes a list of things. So if I say win key and X, maybe that'll press them together. Let's see what running that does. It's still typing X. What's another quick way to open PowerShell?
yeah, one key X is pretty much what I use.
If you know the system, you could go to start. Did you say you use the same one?
Yeah.
Um,
And you gotta remember, my everyday driver is Linux, so.
Speaking of Linux, I saw a cool workaround. I think they were using that tool that you're using right now, Chris. They hooked up a streaming deck to a Nix system, and something like was not corresponding, and it was not wanting to use the extra stream deck with the keyboard presses. And the way they worked around that was by like somehow emulating like those commands with Python.
yeah, so that's what it's for. It's for emulating the commands, but it's
Yes.
a more, it's not a generic emulation.
Yeah, it's exactly. I really like
The way,
emulation's a stretch of what's going on.
yeah, if it was one of my Linux systems, I could do this, because I always set up that shortcut to get to the bash, get the bash immediately, but I have to manually set up that shortcut. It's not built into Linux. But that would automatically give you a bunch of things, the automated processes. I'm not sure what when he, CMD instructions in Python. Because this is the process you're going to do, right? You use OS, the OS module will automatically do it. There's actually some better ones too. Let's see what's here. Yeah, os.system, and then we pass in what we want to do. Command and actually that'll just open the prompt. So if we do os.system, pass in CMD. When I run that, well, I was already in the terminal, but you see it switched from PowerShell to command prompt. So same thing to get to PowerShell, right? PWSH.
Yeah, yeah, try that real quick. That doesn't, yeah, that's
Oh,
not-
that's not it. Oh, wait, I'm on a Windows system. On Kali, it's WSH. I think I actually have to type PowerShell fully.
PowerShell.
That gets it into PowerShell.
Okay,
Once in PowerShell, then is where it really takes off, right? So pig.press C pig.press E. Sorry, my typing's off. For y'all from the ethical hacking class, for a laptop stand, I'm using the monitor, so I'm being very careful not to put any pressure on it, and it's throwing my typing off.
of course.
Yeah, I don't, I couldn't roll my cabinet and everything out of it, so I just started to, these monitors go completely horizontal. Makes a great stand.
I think we just
That
need
is
to get-
hilarious.
I think we just need to get you an actual stand.
That's MacGyver right there, Chris.
Wait, I don't like those monitors either. but-
That's the same thing. Keith said. Ask if I used to watch MacGyver a lot when I was young.
So to your point though, on using this in a rubber ducky situation, I would say at the absolute minimum, it's definitely worth looking into, because Hack 5 rubber duckies are not cheap, and you can make your own DIY rubber duckies for a fraction of the cost. But when push comes to shove, if I don't have to do any type of soldering and transporting of payloads, this is probably something to definitely at least take a look at and dig a bit deeper. At the absolute minimum, from an automation perspective, I see some ideas outside of the ethical hacking scenario.
Automation, macros, everybody needs macros sometimes, right? No matter what you're gonna have them ready to do things at your job. You're gonna
Oh yeah.
down at your desk and click here, then click here, type the same thing every time.
Yep.
And get all of that going. So
Say, I don't know about anybody else, but if anybody remembers the old MMO RPG days where you had to farm stuff for hours,
Yep.
this would have saved everybody a hell of a lot of time.
Oh, yeah.
Then you get banned for botting.
Yes, trust me.
it opened up PowerShell for me, but I don't know where my typing went. Was talking and typing at the same time, but I tried to change directory back to the home directory. But stuff like that, automate those processes. And you also have mouse clicks. So like if you know where the browser is, oops, going to uncomment that. So now
Is this really considered hacking though?
it depends on what you do with it. What I do with it most often is for IoT devices. Whenever it needs to.
Not to steal your thunder there. So I would say that I would not consider, I personally would look at this as a way of automating your scripts to try to start performing attacks.
Yes.
I know that's a much more, I guess, sanitized way of saying certain things, but you know, I
You can
think,
make a few of these and leave them out.
yeah, I think when people say hacking, I kind of just hate the term.
I'm to refer explicitly to rubber duckies because that's
Right.
what or recovery things. I guess that's the ethical hacking version of rubber ducky, right?
Right.
Complete system maintenance on a flash drive. So remember what happens? You plug it in and it fixes the computer.
Right. From a pure attacking scenario perspective, you can use rubber duckies to potentially drop a payload for someone who decides just to plug in a USB drive, which is why we state you never plug in a USB drive that you find on the floor or anywhere. So sorry, had to jump in there on that one.
Yes, that is. So was that Greg that asked that question? Yeah, so
Yeah.
words like hacking is related to what you do with it. So like he's saying, it's more for automating scripts. If you automated some unethical things, well, there would be better ways to do it. Ways that are faster than Python. Python is just usually the easiest language to work with. I use it for debugging input devices most often, but also macros, right? Sit down at your desk, you know you're going to click on certain things. Actually automate the mouse process because there are ways we can capture those numbers. See, right.
And from this perspective, this is a nice proof of concept as well, that, you know, you can, I see a proof of concept that I could take to various schools and I don't have to pay $70 per Hack 5 device. I can have a bunch of these and show it because most 6th and 7th graders now are learning Python. And one of the biggest reasons why I use Python in general is automation of scripts. And in any type of pen testing scenario, you're going to be working with quite a bit of automation. You know, he mentioned brute force earlier. So in my mind, from a pure brute force perspective, I would use something totally different. But with that being said,
better ways, but you could click on the password cell and try to write a combination.
Right. So there's different ways I would probably do some of that stuff. But with that being said, in these situations, from a testing perspective, I see some ideas that I could take advantage of from not only just the input, but also being able to move the mouse and do that and not have to bring up Selenium to try to do it because Selenium's kind of a pain at times to get running clean. Actually all the time to get running clean.
So you would just like import this as a script onto
Mhm.
like external software.
A flash drive
Yeah,
mostly.
so a rubber ducky is you've seen them in Hollywood loves them, where the hero breaks into somebody's office and plugs a flash drive in, and then suddenly they download. It downloads the exact file they're looking for, figures out their password, gets in their computer, downloads the files, and then erases all tracks of it. Hollywood really likes those things, but that's what a rubber ducky is. So not quite that extreme, but automating processes. So maintenance especially. That would be a good one, like plug in a flash drive and it automatically does all your regular maintenance routine. Disk cleanup and recovery and backups, and I guess cloning machines work pretty good too.
So it would be really good for like servers.
Yeah, but anytime you need an automated process, if you need to automate stuff and you know, so you can go in the background and type the instructions directly. But if you might not know those instructions, but you know what you would do with the mouse and the keyboard in order to do it. So automate those, and then it behaves as the mouse and the keyboard. So once that goes to the Python interpreter, and the Python interpreter passes it back to the machine, it's not an emulated text. The Python interpreter tells your operating system that keyboard press happened, or that mouse click happened. So mostly automated processes, but it can be used for other things. And when I was getting ready this morning, I thought, well, there's an ethical hacking class next door. You all might find some useful things in here as well. So that's the useful module for this week. You can look at the documentation, really easy to find.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate you guys inviting us to the class. I think some people probably bailed, but for those that came along, definitely appreciate it. I definitely do see some positive things that I could take out of this. Whether that's on the ethical hacking side, whether that's on the testing side, I see a lot of things on testing that just pops out to me. And just from pure automation where I have to deal with a GUI in some way, shape, or form, because in a lot of situations I try to avoid the GUI, but unfortunately, there's a few things that you just can't, or better yet, it may be beneficial to go through the GUI. So I definitely see some scenarios. So
yeah, like if you had FireEye open in one tab.
Yep.
And so small little repetitive tasks like this. Right? You got all your monitoring going on.
Yep.
Lifesaver and more of them. You can just have the mouse click this one. 10 seconds later, or wait 30 seconds, click this tab.
Yep.
Later, click this tab. 30 seconds later, and just cycle through them just from those clicks, because it's a GUI, so that's really hard to. That's a little bit harder to do manually coding it or to automate it.
I mean, like the alt, in my mind, I wouldn't even use that. I would say if I can get the AltTab press, that's fantastic. So
the Alt-T. Let's open that up and see if it works. Comment those.
The AltTab, right?
Oh, yes. Big dot. Right. I guess that's press.
Yeah, press.
So this is part of the cybersecurity program, not part of the software development.
Big dot. Right. No, this is a software development thing. I had this planned for our class, Greg. It's a useful thing. I just thought it would be useful for them to see as well.
No, I'm just asking if this is a class we get to take.
Oh,
or not.
CSI 105. If you're an SDEV, it's required starting next year, right?
Yes.
Depending on what program you're in.
2023, it's required for the SDEV programs. It is an elective, Greg. Which degree were you on?
Just strictly software development.
AS, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's an elective, but the Department of Defense is going to begin to require the certification that they take at the end of that class. So it's going to be, it might still be on an elective list, but it's the highly, highly encouraged elective because you won't be able to go get a government job without it.
Yeah, it's part of 8140, I believe, is the DoD directive. But CSI 105 is Introduction to Cybersecurity, and that particular class, if you take it with us, you'll touch a lot of different things. So you'll touch a little bit in the, it's 8-week class, so we don't have a ton of time. You'll touch a lot into what a SOC does. You'll touch base in the different types of attack modes. You will get some simulations. Hopefully, by second 8 weeks and going into next fall, you'll actually be able to break something physically. So that's kind of the end goal with the room next door that is still being worked on. Yeah, it's definitely, would love to have you in class because I think all you SDEV guys and gals, when you guys come in, you can bring a lot to the table of writing scripts and getting really, really into it. So I'm much more historically a hardware focused person. So, some of the hardware side of things appeal to me a bit more, but and I had to learn the code. But if you understand and dig programming languages and scripting, it makes things a lot easier on the hardware side. So
Okay, it would need some refinement, but it's wanting to tab between the HTML, so like mouse stick navigation.
Yep.
Tab. So it's going through the HTML, but somehow it with a little bit of modification that could, I'm not sure which would work. Just press both of them. Maybe hotkey. Let me try that. Alt key with Alt and
well, worst case, we can play with this over the next couple of days. So I mean,
that is why I was showing it to y'all, because it is something that may be useful. I thought might be useful for your class. I was thinking you would be right there. Whoops. I went there and then tabbed back to the text editor.
I think that actually didn't work.
Something's going on. But yeah, if it was me and I knew they were going to be open, I would just get the numbers and click, 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 click with a delay in between.
Okay.
But there's lots of ways to do it. Something to play around with. I know a lot
Tell the
of you.
computer what to do.
I thought I would share it with you, and that was for the Python students. That was what I had in mind for the useful module. I've used that for a lot of things, mostly macros and testing microcontroller-based devices that will eventually be plug and play, or Raspberry Pi. But it takes you basically have to erase the entire operating system to make Raspberry Pi plug and play. If you got like a TI microcontroller chip, it just you plug in the USB port, and that's how your game controllers are made anyway. So that sort of.
So is this something we'll be working on? Like,
I was just sharing. It's a library I have found very, very useful. If you want to, Greg, kind of like the emoji stuff, the emojis and all the other ones. It could be useful. But that was kind of what I was going to show. I was just going to talk about the library because programming is an active subject we learn by doing. So I was just going to introduce y'all to it, and it's there, so you can go play around with it. Check the documentation on the instructions and see what all is there and what sort of process you can automate. Macros will probably be one of the most useful things. If you have a repetitive task you do over and over and over again, it can be very useful for that. Not bad for chatbots. I've done that before. Who all came in with your class? Tyler and Kevin?
Kevin was in here for a bit, and We only have like 6, 7 people in the class, so I think some of the other ones probably ditched out to try to get their InfoSec labs done.
Okay, both Tyler and Kevin have heard me talk about this before. So another thing is diversionary, right? If you think somebody might be looking at what you're doing, you can have your computer do more than one thing. You can write a script that just goes over to say Reddit and scrolls and scrolls and scrolls. And somebody checking that out on Wireshark is going to be like, oh, he's just staring at Reddit right now while you're doing something else. And they're not going to dig deeper into those packets.
Do not give me an alibi for murder. It's not a good idea.
Oh, yeah, I did alibi reasons. That can be a useful thing. I always think of it as diversion. If you think there's spyware on there, they're going to stop at the easy to find stuff. I'm like, yeah, I see what
Well, seriously, actually, you got me thinking a bit more on this from use cases. If I'm building a honeypot, the one thing in honeypots that people have issues with is a lot of times it's recorded information. If I could build a honeypot and have basically essentially a poor person's digital twin, essentially doing some stuff at a period of time, that could be of interest. So you brought up Reddit, but if I have a person who's basically over a period of time look like they're clicking, look like they're doing something, take a pause for 5 or 10 minutes, then type some stuff, maybe go and look at some fake emails that look real, et cetera, that could be interesting
that's actually pretty
to
cool.
put together.
somewhere between 45 and 90 seconds.
Yeah,
And then do the next thing. Just each pass gives a unique delay.
Yeah,
That's a great use for it. I always mention rubber duckies the first thing I think of because it's an easy introduction to them because you don't need the hard background coding stuff.
right.
You don't have to get to word manipulation on the RAM check.
Yeah.
You can just
I really think on the honeypot scenarios because there's 2 difficulties with honeypots. One is if you're doing desktop honeypots, essentially kind of the stuff of how do I have a set of data without keylogging essentially someone else, of a repository of people doing XYZ tasks and making it look like it's a normal human being. And then number 2, of course, is getting multiples of that. So I see some possibilities here. Now, go ahead, sorry.
Oh yeah, I never thought of the honeypot. That is a great one for it. And
Yep.
Like Tyler's question there, your regular honeypot that is just a regular loop isn't going to show up in the keylog.
Right.
Like, yeah, they're doing something, but nothing's showing up on the keylog, and this will behave like the regular keys. So it's going to, obviously you can block that. It's normal. We don't need to dive in that now. But if you wanted it to show up on a keylogger, so it really does look like a person is there pushing the keys.
Yep. Because ideally, one of my things is, let's say, I have to look at the whatever the hack was from Iran a few months ago or last January, but part of that was a key logging solution. Now, granted, they were targeting much higher value targets, but a lot of scenarios of more advanced malwares and ransomwares have keyloggers built into it, part of CNC. So, having the ability to have some obfuscation with honeypots could be a possibility. That's kind of
and then back to the original, no matter what you do, you're going to have those random repetitive tasks to work. So
exactly.
like macro in Word or record a macro in Excel.
Yep.
Scripting those.
So it's 8:24. I think we kind of taken over your class long enough. So I think I'm gonna bounce out. Tyler and
All right.
Kevin,
Yeah, thank you.
you can stay if you want. It's all up to Chris on that. But
Look at virtual environments, so if you want to stick around and see that, Tyler. So
I'm gonna grab some din, but I appreciate your time, Chris, and thank you for showing me that. It really like solidified some things I thought in my head that really linked into some things I heard earlier this week. So thank you.
let's get gears grinding in your mind, so you might come up with a reason for it.
Yes, thank you.
The easiest way to automate, script-based automating is how I think of it. And
Yep.
y'all were right next door, or sometimes you're right next door and thought it would be useful for you, so.
no, this is good. And actually, I can see another use kind of even in some of the network infrastructure type of things as well. But you know, we'll you know, I'll let my gears grind a bit as well, and I'll touch base with you tomorrow. And Tyler, you too. This could be a project for Technology Club.
Yeah, I'd love to. I want to bring up more tech club stuff with both of you, especially like a soldering project. I think that'd be really fun.
Yep.
Okay, that's where I use this the most often. I use this with PySerial, which sends the serial data, so the USB to Python. That's where I use it the most often.
Okay.
But it has other uses, and for everybody that saw it, you probably have gears grinding in a different way of things you could automate on your computer with it.
Yep.
Or clicking the buttons. But I thought you all might find it useful, so I figured I'd invite you.
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Later.
Have a good night, guys.
So that was the virtual, the useful Python module I had in mind for this semester. And obviously it's one of them you probably want to rename, because it's a good chance typos are going to happen if you type that whole thing out every time. So back to that last thing we were looking at here. Close this. So I did quickly do the instructions. So I guess now we can do it like a review and do it again. Open up PowerShell. Go to documents/delete. And I'll just remove -r that temp directory. But before I do that, let's look at what's in there. So now talking about it, we saw both instructions that we need. So when we install that, if we go in here, you'll see some things that might look kind of familiar from the Python installation. You'll notice there's no python.exe. We saw one of those at break, right? Answering the question. But there is a lib library. If we go in here, site packages, they got pip and setup tools and other things that you may have seen where your Python is installed. So it gives us a completely brand new empty installation of Python. So if I go ahead and delete that folder, and you can see it's gone now, so let's go through that again. So Python interpreter is going to run the virtual environment module, and then we need a folder to put it in. So I'll make one called PyTemp. And we can do this over and over again. So I've picked the name PyTemp. If you have one project, maybe you're working on a word processor, and at the same time you're doing a calendar. You can call one folder word processor, another folder calendar, and both of them have a completely blank installation of Python. So it's a lot easier to track things. And then to use it, we go into that folder. So PyTemp, and in there's a folder called scripts, which I guess we can look at. Documents and delete. And in PyTemp, there's a scripts folder, and you'll notice there's an activate batch file, an activate shell file for Bash Linux. So whichever one you need, it's there. Activate a PowerShell file and a deactivate file. So to start it, we go to that scripts folder and just type activate, and notice the prompt change. So now it's in this different version. I didn't put in any other parameters, so if I thought start the Python interpreter, Right here, we can see there, it's version 3.11. So same version it was. But if I go back out here and do pip freeze this time, you see there's nothing installed there. I don't know, pip install Pygame. Maybe this is a some sort of game. A fresh installation of Python to work on a game so we can keep track of everything. Probably wouldn't have any other modules installed for that, but now if I run pip freeze, why did not pop up? Did that not install? I didn't really look. Did it skip error messages? I was only half watching the screen. Did it skip error? Did it throw any error messages? Anybody pay attention? Pip install emoji. Well, I'll do it this way. I go to Python. Oh wait, it might have skipped that because it was already in the other one. So import emoji. Has no idea what emoji is because that's in the regular installation of Python. Let's go back out of here. Pip install emoji. Same one we saw last time. I'm using the cache version. Does all that. And you can see the little prompt there to remind us we're in the virtual version. And you can have lots of those. So now if I go in Python and import emoji, the emoji's there. Print emoji dot emojize. Hi there, colon, thumbs up, colon. Oh, and then the parentheses. There. So we have just the one module. I don't know why freeze didn't work there. Is pip freeze not going to work here? Oh, okay, it worked that time. There must have been an error message and I wasn't really paying attention. I just saw it got to the end and assumed it installed. But then once again, we only used one external library. So it's really, really easy to find that to put in that requirements file. Instead of digging through all of the full list and trying to remember which ones were used and which ones weren't. When small applications like a classroom, that's easy. But when you have 100 classes, and then those classes are used in 15 different scripts, it's a little harder to keep track of what you imported where. So a virtual environment is a really, really useful way to do that. And when you're done with it, you can deactivate it. And if you're fully done with it, don't need that anymore. It's all saved somewhere. Just remove the folder because it's all self-contained in that same folder. Remove -r Python and give it a name, give it a meaningful name, like always with variables. Name it with your project so you can keep track of which one it is because it shows up in parentheses right before you. Anybody have any questions about virtual environments? They're incredibly useful. You can look into them a little bit more. You can add a parameter and use any version of Python is set up to run any previous version of Python. We're on 3.11, so we can go back to any old version of Python and create a virtual environment there and work on our software that way. Is that everything on my list? So CLI stuff. You see the acronym CLI? I don't think we use that. That's command line interface. That's the general way we refer to all of them because some of them are called prompts, some of them are called terminals, some of them are called, yeah, they all have different names. Command line interface, abbreviated CLI is the general acronym. So that we'll do that next week. I just put it on here in case we needed to get that said that. Okay. Anybody have any questions about the stuff this evening? So I would recommend giving that useful library we looked at a try, because there's probably something you could automate. Moving around, clicking, typing words, maybe not as much as what the cybersecurity people were talking about, but cybersecurity people need a lot more automated processes, because if somebody's trying to hack into your system, you can't do that. They're hacking in with an automated process. You can't type quick enough to stop them. You need to have automated defenses. Okay, that was a few seconds of silence, so I assume that means no questions. If you have any, I will be sitting around till 9:50 waiting for questions to come my way. Otherwise, y'all have a great night. Have a good weekend. If you have any questions, let me know. From now till 9:50, I'm sitting here waiting for questions, but you can ask me questions anytime. Have a great one. I'll see you all on Monday.
Thanks, Chris.
Have a good night.
You too.